All right, welcome everyone. We're going to let the everyone join and we'll get going in a minute. Okay, we'll get everybody. We have a big crowd, so we just want to wait and give everyone just maybe one more minute to get in and we'll get going. All right, so as people join the meeting, let's get started because it's a big topic with a lot of information. So hello, everyone. Welcome to Financial Fridays with SAANYS and Equitable. Today's topic is student loan forgiveness. SAANYS is excited to offer these sessions in cooperation with our corporate partner, Equitable Advisors. Equitable has a long-standing presence in New York, and a large portion of their New York client base is built upon the work they do within the public education system. Through Equitable, SAANYS members can receive competitive insurance rates and a full array of retirement services, including a complimentary financial profile for SAANYS members, which we urge you to take advantage of. This is a great benefit of membership. So joining us today from Equitable is Emmy Fries. So we'll save the questions to the end of the presentation, but feel free to add your questions to the chat or the Q&A panel at any time. Please remember that Q&A time today is best used for general questions, but please know that that whole Equitable team and Emmy is available at any time to answer your personal and confidential questions. You'll find contact information for Emmy and other regional Equitable representatives at saanys.org. Now I'll turn it over to Emmy. Emmy?
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. As said before, my name is Emmy Fries, and I am a financial advisor with Equitable. And today we are going to talk about public service loan forgiveness. So if someone could just let me know when they can see my screen, that would be wonderful.
I can see it just fine.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you all for having me here today. My team specializes in working with New York State pensioned employees on creating financial plans. And as such, we have learned a lot about public service loan forgiveness, and we are always happy to share our knowledge with SAANYS members. Before we get into information on PSLF today, I just want to start by taking a minute to allow everyone to read this slide. This is very important to my compliance office, and it just is telling everyone that this seminar is general information. Nothing that I say today is meant to be legal or tax advice. And if you have questions, make sure to reach out to me and we'll set a time privately to talk so that we can make sure that anything you are doing is suitable and in your best interest. I'm just going to give this a few more seconds to read through. Okay. Before we get into public service loan forgiveness, I do want to quick touch on teacher loan forgiveness, because one thing that people often confuse are these two programs. Teacher loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness are separate, and just because someone has been denied teacher loan forgiveness in the past does not mean that they should not try for public service loan forgiveness. Teacher loan forgiveness can also be granted in addition to public service loan forgiveness. So if, say, you got teacher loan forgiveness 10 years ago, you can still go for PSLF today. The basics of teacher loan forgiveness are that you need to work 5 consecutive years at a Title I school. And a Title I school is a school that has free or reduced lunches. You can figure out whether or not your specific building is Title I by going to studentaid.gov. At the end of those 5 consecutive years, depending on your certifications, you receive either $17,500 in forgiveness or $5,000 in forgiveness. And one of the big roadblocks to teacher loan forgiveness, and one of the reasons that people often think that they don't qualify for PSLF, is many educators have been in the business for decades, and therefore they had loans taken out prior to October 1st, 1998. And anyone who took any type of loan out for education prior to October 1st, 1998, is automatically disqualified from teacher loan forgiveness. So now that we've gone through the basics of teacher loan forgiveness, let's get to today's actual topic, public service loan forgiveness. Today we're going to go through the history of PSLF, the basic rules of PSLF, the temporary expanded public service loan forgiveness program, the PSLF waiver, and then we're going to have time for questions at the end. And I love answering your questions. Sometimes people are shy. Please, at the end, feel free to ask questions. Public service loan forgiveness was established under the College Cost Reduction and Access Act of 2007, which permits direct loan borrowers who make 120 qualifying payments under a qualifying repayment plan while working full-time for a qualifying employer to have their loans forgiven. Now, I know that was a huge mouthful, but I promise it's not as complicated as the jargon makes it sound. And public service loan forgiveness has been a work in progress for a long time. In 2007, the College Cost Reduction and Access Act was originally passed because we had a shortage of public workers in this country, and the government had a moment where all of a sudden they didn't know how they were going to keep government and non-for-profit organizations running, largely because the cost of education for the people in these fields did not match up with the salaries that they were making. When you're requiring a teacher to get a master's degree and then they're starting off making $40,000 a year, that can be a hard pill for people to swallow. So everyone was very excited when the College Cost Reduction and Access Act was passed, but then, as the government does, they didn't quite know how to enact any kind of change yet. So finally, in 2012, the employment certification form came to fruition. And the employment certification form is still very, very important today and something that every single person on this call who wants public service loan forgiveness will need to fill out. The employment certification form is what tells student aid that you are a public employee. Because the reality is, it doesn't matter what someone went and got their degree in. We don't know whether you went and got a job at a school or whether you went into the private sector. So in 2012, people started filling out their employment certification forms and filling them in, sending them in. But then nothing really happened. No one seemed to be getting forgiveness. It seemed like this was not a real program. We had a lot of clients who were like, oh, this is wonderful. They're going to get forgiveness. And it just seemed like smoke and mirrors, a fantasy. Basically, we were like, maybe we'll wait till Christmas and see if Santa brings student loan forgiveness. But he didn't. And eventually in 2018, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2018 gave additional conditions that made borrowers eligible for loan forgiveness. So we thought, yay, all of these roadblocks, all of these unclear directions, they're being cleared up. And once again, everyone's getting forgiveness. During our time here, and I have 15 people that are on my team, and we have thousands of clients between those 15 people. 2 clients got loan forgiveness because there were still so many hoops to jump through. And this is why many of you and many of your colleagues think that you don't qualify for forgiveness because there were just so many issues prior to 2021. In 2021, 60 Minutes came out with a special that called student loan forgiveness a sham and shamed the government and politicians for pretending that it was real. And the Department of Education actually came out with changes that made student loan forgiveness very, very real. And I will tell everyone that since October 2021, we have seen a lot of success with student loan forgiveness. I still get 1 to 2 emails a week from clients and friends of clients saying, "Thank you. I found out today I got loan forgiveness." So, if in the past loan forgiveness has not worked for you, do not give up hope. Just remember that it is more of an art than a science, but it is something real now. Now, I know on the screen it says that this waiver expired in 2022. In our experience, it still is worth it to go through the process because we are still seeing a lot of success with student loan forgiveness, even with the waiver expiration, largely because the Department of Ed knows that by taking it away, they're probably going to cause some problems. So let's start with the basics of PSLF. How long do we need to work? What type of employee do we need to be? What type of organization do we need to work for? And do we need specific payment types? First, let's talk longevity and employee type. In order to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, someone needs to work 10 years for a qualifying employer. It does not need to be the same employer. So if you worked at Rochester City School District for 5 years and then went to a school district down on Long Island, no big deal, as long as it is 10 years total. Those years also don't need to be consecutive. I have a client who she got out of school. She got a job as a kindergarten teacher in Webster, New York, did that for 3 years, got pregnant, ended up having 3 kids, took 7 years off from working, and then went back and got another teaching job at a different school district. And once she made it to the 10 years total, she applied for forgiveness and she got forgiveness. It's also important to note that on the employment certification form, they do specify that you need to be full time during your 10 years. What they do not specify is what full time actually means. And full time, for the purposes of this program, is 30 hours a week. So if you have someone who's a teacher assistant that's maybe not getting a full 40 hours a week, they can still apply for the program. Type of organization is also important to talk about. Anyone who works for a non for profit, 501c3, public school, or government organization should consider applying for public service loan forgiveness. I have a client. She's a principal at a school at the Rochester City School District. I had her sending in her employment certification forms, and she was 9 years in. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting. Next year, she's probably going to get student loan forgiveness. And we were just talking about retirement. And she said to me, my husband reminded me that I have an old deferred comp. And for those of you who don't know, a deferred comp is typically for state workers. And I said, what kind of job were you working where you have a deferred comp? And she said, after I graduated from college, I was working sporadic substitute teaching jobs, but I needed something a little bit more stable. So a friend of mine got me a job at the City of Rochester Parks and Recreation. It was an evening job. I was working maybe 30 to 35 hours a week. And I was like, well, that's awesome because you just added another year to your payment history for public service loan forgiveness because that is a government organization. So keep in mind that public schools count, but other types of organizations count as well. You or your coworkers may also have worked at charter schools some years. Charter schools are typically coded as 501c3 organizations, and typically that time will count as well. Now, there have been some challenges to public service loan forgiveness. The first is you need to make on time payments, so no more than 10 days early or 5 days late. You also need to make 120 qualifying payments, and you can only make one qualifying payment a month. So sometimes people will get very excited and they'll say, I'm going to make a qualifying payment every week. Nope. You can make one a month, 12 a year. It is a 10-year program. You cannot shorten the 10 years. You also have to have direct loans, and we'll talk a little bit more about direct loans later in this presentation. And you need to be on an income-driven repayment plan. And all of these different things presented a lot of roadblocks for people trying to get public service loan forgiveness. And that is why the temporary expanded public service loan forgiveness program was originally passed in 2018. This, as a reminder, is the program that we thought we were going to be getting everyone forgiveness through, and then we ended up getting 2 people forgiveness through. For this, you still had to work 10 years at a qualifying organization. You still needed to be full-time, 30 hours a week. You still needed those 120 on-time payments and direct loans, but it made the repayment plan type more flexible. Unfortunately, the larger issue with PSLF wasn't the repayment plan type, it was direct loans. And direct loans means that your loans are tied directly to the federal government and not to an agency just backed by the federal government. So that is why, after that 60 Minutes special that embarrassed the government, they came out with the public service loan forgiveness waiver. Because now you still need to do the 10 years, you still need to be full time, you still need to make 120 payments, but you could consolidate your FFELP loans to direct loans in order to make them eligible. The reality is, most people who took out loans prior to 2010 had FFELP loans. So everybody who was applying for this program between 2010 and 2020 just seemed to never qualify. If you have FFELP loans, definitely put some time on my calendar and we need to talk about whether or not you should consolidate them to direct loans, because it's really the change from FFELP to direct that has made the difference and has started really pushing the ball in the right direction when it comes to student loan forgiveness. Now, next steps. The first thing you need to ask yourself is, do I have direct loans? If the answer is yes, I have direct loans, then you need to complete the magical employment certification form. The employment certification form is very, very easy to fill out. You will need one for each previous qualifying employer. So if you have worked at multiple school districts, you will need to print off an employment certification form for each district that you have worked at. After you fill out your employment certification form, somebody with access to payroll, and it can't be yourself, even if you have access to payroll, needs to sign off on your employment. That is them saying, yes, I know him or her, and they work here and they have worked here from this state to this state. If you do not have direct loans, then you will not qualify for student loan forgiveness. So you need to log into studentaid.gov and consolidate your loans into direct loans. Once they are direct loans, at that point, you can complete and submit your employment certification form. And just as a repeat, you will need an employment certification form for each previous employer. I will tell you, student loan forgiveness is a bit of a waiting game. So after you submit that handy dandy ECF, it's not going to happen overnight, but be patient and follow up with your loan provider. Now, what is great about student loan forgiveness is that all of a sudden you're going to see a $0 outstanding balance if you qualify and you follow all the correct steps. And what's even better about that is typically with student loan forgiveness programs, there's some kind of taxable event associated with them. If any of you are friends with nurses, they often deal with this when it comes to their forms of loan forgiveness. But with public service loan forgiveness, there is no tax on their forgiveness amount. That makes a very large difference for people when considering whether or not loan forgiveness is suitable for them. I want to go through a few frequently asked questions. The first is, I have Parent Plus loans. How does this apply? Parent Plus loans are sometimes forgivable. There are more hoops to jump through, and you have to be on a specific type of income-driven repayment plan. If you have questions about Parent Plus loans, that is definitely a one-on-one discussion, because as it turns out, everyone's Parent Plus loans seem to be a little bit different. Also, the Parent Plus loans would need to be in the parent who is the public employee's name. So if you have one parent as a public employee and one parent as a private employee, and the private employee is the person who took out the Parent Plus loans, they can't go for public service loan forgiveness. I've achieved some forgiveness. How does this impact my situation? As stated earlier in this presentation, if you have achieved teacher loan forgiveness in the past, you can still apply for public service loan forgiveness. What about Fed loan? So it used to be that everyone had to be with Fed loan to apply for forgiveness. If you were with Fed loan, you are likely now with MOHELA. If you have questions about your servicer, that is also a one-on-one conversation, but there are 5 main servicers and they are all pretty good with processing paperwork for student loan forgiveness. How do I know my paperwork was submitted correctly? Have to call your student loan servicer. Sometimes there are long waits, but I have never gotten a hold of a person and had them not be perfectly kind and pleasant and helpful. So I will say, make yourself a cup of tea, get a snack, be ready to be on hold for a while, but you usually get a very kind, knowledgeable person on the other end when you do get a hold of someone. I've submitted my paperwork, but I haven't heard anything. What should I do next? The first is you need to give it a couple weeks, but then you can always call your servicer and make sure that they received the paperwork. And then over time, it's good to just continue to follow up. I believe I said this before, student loan forgiveness is an art, it is not a science. And you need to make good decisions for yourself and what you think is in your best interest. And lots of times, just being on top of the servicers, making sure the paperwork was submitted correctly goes a really long way. I hope all of you found this presentation helpful. And if anyone ever has any questions, you are always more than welcome to put time on my calendar. Below is my email. And if you go to that QR code, you can also put time directly on my calendar for a virtual meeting. I'm always very, very happy to talk to educators. I know you don't always have a lot of time for yourself, but your financial well being is very, very important, whether that is student loans, saving for retirement, saving for a house, or talking about saving for a child's education. We want you to make time for that because it will take a weight off of your shoulders, and we are here to help along the way.
Okay. I mean, we do have a few questions in the Q&A. I think you hit some of them. Can you see those?
Yes. Okay. So the first question is, where do we access the employment certification form? You would go to studentaid.gov. You can also Google PSLF employment certification form and a PDF will pop up. Can Parent Plus loans qualify for forgiveness? Sometimes. Um, I am a 34-year-old educator in the New York City Public Schools Title I school. I'm retired but hold Parent Plus loans for my son who is not an educator. We need to meet one-on-one for something like that. And you're more than welcome to put time on my calendar for one-on-ones. FFELP loans, if you had loans prior to 2010, they're likely listed as an FFELP loan where they're not directly attached to the federal government. So you just need to talk about consolidation of those. I taught for 8 years and then switched to admin. Would I still qualify? Yes, for PSLF, it doesn't matter what your position is, it just matters who your employer is. If you're going for teacher loan forgiveness, they actually only care about what your certifications are. So if you are a certified special education or STEM teacher, but you got out of school, you're working for a Title I school and you're teaching basket weaving, they care about the certifications and the fact that you're at a Title I school. And PSLF, it's just the employer. Is there any kind of public service loan forgiveness that can be applied for if I've not made 120 payments? I would encourage people to still apply even when they haven't made it to the 120, just so that they're sending in paperwork each and every year. But it says I finished school in 2020. The reality is any type of forgiveness program will, to an extent, be a time game. So you do need to work in certain areas for a certain amount of time in order to actually get the forgiveness. How does income affect eligibility for loan forgiveness? So income will not affect your eligibility for forgiveness. What income will impact is how much you are paying on your loans when you are on an income-driven repayment plan. So if you are making a low income, say you're right out of school and it's your first year teaching, you could, in theory, have a $0 payment. And I have a lot of first year teachers that have $0 payments right now because when they look at how much they're making versus how much they owe, their income driven repayment knocks them down to nothing. And if you are on the appropriate income driven repayment plan, even if your payment is $0 a month, those $0 a month payments will still count. Um, my consolidated loan has consistently been denied because of one. Okay, so if you're getting denied because of the 1998 rule, which I see as a question here, you're applying for the wrong loan forgiveness program. You need to apply for public service loan forgiveness, not teacher loan forgiveness. If there's any confusion on if you're applying for the wrong program, please just put time on my calendar. It will take us 20 minutes to figure out, and I'd rather you just apply to the correct one and save you the headache. I have a spousal consolidation loan. Can I still qualify? That's very rare because usually those are private loans that you consolidated. But I'd have to look at your studentaid.gov to be sure. Can you put the scheduler back up? Yes, I'll put that up at the end. I just need to read this first. Can we apply for multiple loan forgiveness programs? Yes, you can. The SAVE plan is typically the most cost-effective income-driven repayment plan. Someone had questions about that. And if you're not on an IDR plan, you should probably get on an IDR plan. Typically, that will fix a lot of issues. Yeah, let me share my screen again so everyone can see my contact information. Since a few people did ask for that in the chat. Yeah, so my contact information is emily.freeze@equitable.com, and the QR code actually links directly to my calendar. There's 3 more minutes left. I can no longer see the Q&A chat, so if any other questions are popping up and someone wants to read those off to me, I just
Okay.
had a few people there asking for contact information.
Yeah, that's fine, Emmy. Thank you. So the few more I don't think we got to yet. It's can my loan for my administrative degree be forgiven or only my teaching degree?
Any degree loan can be forgiven. So you could have gone and gotten a degree in business and then gone back for teaching. And if you have worked for 10 years at a qualifying organization, they can all be forgiven.
And our last question, you may have answered this before. As a follow-up, will higher income keep you from getting loan forgiveness?
Higher income could potentially increase the amount that you owe each month on an income-driven repayment plan. So if you end up paying off your loans before the 10 years, then yes, but it does not disqualify you from actually being part of the program.
Okay. All right. So in our chat is posted a overview flyer on loan forgiveness from Equitable. And then I also see that Emmy's calendar and scheduler are also in the chat. So you could take a couple minutes to click those 2 links. They're in the chat, not in the Q&A. And I think that's it for today. Thank you, Emmy. That was very informative. And as a reminder too, this session was recorded and it will be available next week at SAANYS.org under resources. Okay. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks again, Emmy. Bye-bye.